Come, warm yourself by the bonfire as we talk about some of the monsters that the Celtic people were afraid of during Samhain. Hello fellow monster hunters and welcome to the Monster Preservation and Research Society. My name is Rob, and as you can see, we are sitting around the bonfire tonight. Not only does it keep out the cold, chilly autumn air, it also keeps out any unwanted visitors, just like our ancient Celtic ancestors did during this time of year thousands of years ago. See, the tradition of Halloween originated at the ancient Celtic pagan festival Samhain, or Samhain. Samhain was to celebrate the end of the harvest and the beginning of autumn. It also was the beginning of the hardest time of year for the ancient Celtic people, as autumn gave way to winter. Like our modern interpretation, Halloween, Samhain was a time where there would be great feasts and parties and bonfires and dressing up in costume. This was a time that the Celts would sturdy themselves to the looming darkness that was coming and to the creatures that dwelled within. Donning costumes, the ancient Celts hoped they could keep these monsters, fairies, and ghosts at bay, at least for another year. Now, most of us already know the history of Halloween and Samhain and how it has turned into the modern festivities that we celebrate today. So for this meeting of the Monster Preservation and Research Society, we will be talking about some of the monsters that the ancient Celtic people were afraid of. The ones that they were dressing up in costume to scare off, to ward off, to defend themselves against. So this is just a few of the monsters, fairies, goblins, ghosts, spirits that they had to deal with during Samhain. We'll begin our tour of ancient Irish horrors with one of the most well-known, the banshee. As we all know, the banshee was a female spirit who heralds the death of a family member, usually by screaming, wailing, shrieking, or keening. In the old Celtic tongue, her name was banshee, and was known as the Lady of Fairymound, or the Fairy Woman. The name comes from the fact that the banshee would fly forth from the fairy mounds to terrorize the Irish countryside once the sun went down. Sometimes she had long, streaming hair and wears a gray cloak over a green dress, and her eyes are red from continual weeping. Some texts say she may be dressed in white with red hair and a ghastly complexion. In Ireland and parts of Scotland, a traditional part of mourning is the keening woman, who wails a lament. Irish legend speaks of a lament being sung by a fairy woman, or banshee. She would sing it when a family member died or was about to die, even if the person had died far away and news of their death had not yet come. In those cases, her wailing would be the first warning the household had of death. The popular thought is that fairies are happy little Irish mythological creatures that possess a variety of magical powers. Our next creature, the dullahan, is an ease-she that you'd struggle to describe as happy. He is depicted as a headless horseman on a black horse who carries his own head held high in his hands. The mouth is usually in a hideous grin that touches both sides of the head. Its eyes are constantly moving about and can see across the countryside even during the darkest of nights. The flesh of the head is said to be the color and consistency of moldy cheese. It was also said that it used the spine of a human corpse as a whip. As this lore has grown over time, the dullahan began to man a coach or wagon that was adorned with funeral objects. There were candles and skulls to light the way. The spokes of the wheels were made from thigh bones, and the wagon's covering was made from dried human skin. The ancient Irish believed that where the dullahan stops riding, a person is due to die. The dullahan calls out the person's name, drawing away the soul of his victim, at which point the person immediately drops dead. But don't have any fear, because there are rumors that golden objects can force the dullahan to disappear. Next is the bananich. In Irish folklore, the bananich are a supernatural race that were known to haunt battlefields. The bananich are airborne shrieking demons that haunted battlefields and areas of combat, encouraging and celebrating the bloodshed below. In some early Irish texts, they are described as having the heads or bodies of goats, but mostly they seem to have been a more elemental form of spirit closely associated with violence and violent death. The bananich were sometimes imagined as screaming female demons or specters drawn by violence to circle the skies over combat areas. This version of the creature bears a resemblance to the banshee, but instead of predicting death, the bananich fed off of death. Next are the slogs. These restless spirits that were said to be neither welcomed in hell or heaven were left to roam the lands. According to legend, the slogs were angry about their fate and would snatch the soul of anyone who crossed their path. The name is translated from the Old Irish word of host, army, crowd, or assembly. This makes sense because it was said that the slogs were the hosts of the unforgiven dead. In the words of British folklorist Lewis Spence, the slog or fairy host was regarded as composed of the souls of the dead flying through the air, and the Feast of the Dead at Halloween was likewise the festival of the fairies. Usually taking a crescent form, similar to a flight of gray birds, they were said to be able to approach and pick up a person from any direction, and then transport them far away through the air from one island to another. Although they would sometimes rescue humans from dangerous rock cliffs, they were generally portrayed as dangerous to mortals. The last creature we'll talk about is one that encompasses so much of the ancient Celtic monster folklore, and it is the puka. The puka is an evil, shape-changing fairy who wreaks havoc on people at night. Pukas will take on the form of a horse to stampede through people's property and destroy their huts, sheds, and corrals. If that wasn't bad enough, while in its horse or pony form, the puka will offer unweary travelers a welcomed ride. Once astride, the rider is taken on the most dangerous ride of their lives through marsh and bramble, only to be thrown off miles from their home. Sometimes the puka will appear as a jet black dog with blazing eyes that hunts the paths and roads looking for its next victim. There have also been tales of them turning into large eagles and swooping down and attacking unexpected people. As far as its shape-changing capabilities, the puka is a creature of nature, and it's very comfortable turning into almost any animal or human-animal hybrid. It was thought that the puka's natural form was that of a small human-like goblin. While they are in their goblin form, they will call out the name of their victims outside of a home and wait for them to emerge. If they come out, the puka will kidnap them. But if they do not, the puka will destroy their property outside. They also were known to steal crops, which is why some farmers would allocate a section of their crops to the puka as a way of appeasing it. During the autumn and winter seasons, this is a bigger fear because of the lack of food. And with that lack of food, they could anger the puka. There is no clear meaning behind the legend of the puka, but this creature most closely resembles the cross-cultural concept of a boogeyman, as it preys on the unexpected at nighttime. These 5 monsters, spirits, and fairies are only a small sampling of the creatures the ancient Celtic people had to deal with during Samhain. Samhain was that one time of year where the barriers that protected mankind were their weakest. And all of those creatures were just waiting in the darkness outside of the protective glow of the bonfires. Fairies and spirits were just a normal daily occurrence to the people of Ireland. A lot of their customs sprang up to help themselves be protected against the mischievous to the horrid of these creatures. It wasn't all bad though, because there were plenty that were very helpful, as long as they were treated right. No matter what you call it, Halloween, All Hallows Eve, Samhain, Samhain, it is a time for us to reflect on what is out in the darkness. I, for one, love the thought that it is a weakening of a barrier that ghosts and goblins and fairies and monsters can step forth into our world and mingle with us for one night. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, after the trick-or-treating was done and I was back home, safe in bed, I remember looking out the window, just trying to catch a glimpse of something walking in the dark forests behind my house. Just in my imagination, I love to envision just little goblins and what have you peeking around the trees and just having as much fun as they possibly could before the sun came up. That to me is the purest form of Halloween, and that is what I hold on to every year. Anyway, this has just been a brief glimpse into some of the monsters, ghosts, spirits, fairies, what have you, that the ancient Celtic people had to deal with during Samhain. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them and I love getting back to everybody. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this or any of the episodes down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you will be notified whenever there's a new episode. So anyway, until next time, happy Halloween. Thanks for watching. Keep being rad and stay dorky.